candidates are quite empowered and candidates are coming in there to sort of drill down on who you are and what you stand for and what the culture is like and what am I stepping into and the benefits, the flexibility, the work from home.
I have an open door policy. You know that. Your team knows that. You can always, my door is literally always open. Anyone can come in and talk to me. And I think that's something that the team appreciates, regardless of what level you are. If we bring interns in sometimes as well, you can come talk to me. Anyone can come in and have a chat. And I think providing that guidance to anybody, anytime, anywhere, just being that sort of transparent leader, accessible.
In today's episode of Steering Success, we'll be talking to Curtis Schmidt, the President and Chief Growth Officer of the digital agency RAPP. We'll be discussing leading a business through transformation, the client and vendor relationship, and the importance of marketing in every business in the region. In today's episode of Steering Success, we'll be talking to Curtis Schmidt, the President and Chief Growth Officer of a fast-growing digital agency called RAPP, who are part of the Omnicom Precision Marketing Group. Today, we'll be discussing leading a business through transformation, the client and vendor relationship in the region, and the importance of marketing in every business. Welcome, Curtis.
Thank you, Abdul. Yes, I am the Chief Growth Officer of RAPP, not President. Coming from Canada, I've considered a global nomad, sort of hopping around here and there. I've worked in China and the Middle East. This is my third country, Europe, throughout Europe, and mostly involved in, let's say, transformation projects around precision marketing. So application more specifically of first-party data, CRM, and overall business transformation. So that's why I'm sitting in this seat today, and I'm here in the Middle East for the foreseeable future because there's a lot of transformation happening here.
Absolutely. And we spoke off recording and you were mentioning the term change maker, which is the term that I really love. Can you give us a bit more sort of a background into that?
Yeah. So often I'm put into situations where I'm tasked with, better yet, going into a situation trying to understand how do we switch the course or the direction of the company into, let's say, more the digital realm. So I operate in that space, and in terms of change making and facilitating that change, it's I'm fairly pragmatic. So I operate like a startup. Yep. So really looking at where do you add value, and that's kind of how I started my career, and that's where I've gained traction, and that's where I've seen the most success. So very pragmatic, very operational, and I go into big organizations and I operate like a startup.
Amazing.
Lean.
Very lean. And the RAPP, when it comes to what they offer, it's creative, it's analytics, it's CRM, it's data, it's digital marketing, loyalty.
Yeah, so historically, RAPP globally is more around CRM. So, back in the 80s and 90s, we did door drops, right? So when you get the Christmas book delivered to your door with your address, addressing your parents, that was let's say the original form of CRM or personalized marketing, because it was to a specific person. Yeah. And that's what RAPP did way back when RAPP Collins in New York. And you fast forward today, and we're managing more cloud hosting, where we take data, we match it to content, and we try to do personalized communication. So that's what RAPP does here in the region. Why I was brought here is pre-COVID, the agency was operating more like a creative shop. Yeah. So more around, let's say ATL or through line. And I was brought in to bring it closer to the RAPP capabilities, which is CRM. And it just was serendipity that post-COVID, the Gulf region has fast forwarded in terms of the importance of first-party data, the importance of personalization. And now we're growing quite quickly. So we've got a lot of data analysts, business transformationalists, CRM. We have a lot of people that are in that discipline too. So it's getting much wider. We even have PR, funny enough. So we're getting into PR because PR is closely linked to social, which is also closely linked to media, which is then linked to the data. So yeah.
And this region is particularly famous for latching onto buzzwords and not really truly understanding anything beyond the surface level of that word or those words, and data is one of them, or data insights, or data under science and so forth. So that this puts you in a unique position where you can add genuine value to every client that you are talking to and the region as a whole, if we can become sort of leaders in this space. How do you sort of, come from abroad with that knowledge and then try and lead a business into becoming the go-to sort of agency in this part of the world?
Yeah, that was my first year, 18 months. That was a lot of, let's say, trial by fire, and baptism by fire, if you will. So typically data here would be something that was siloed in the IT department, right?
Yeah.
And this is where decisions were made around it, and it was quite siloed thinking, right? It wasn't really considered a, let's say, value driver for other departments such as marketing. So we still have challenges today in terms of breaking down those silos and having more of a, let's say, connected client-side ecosystem where we plug into that. But I think the biggest thing for me and coming into the region, being exposed to the region, was understanding that this conversation is happening now. It's not something that was already established. So knowing the client, knowing what their challenges are, knowing where decisions are made is really important, and their overall understanding of data and the application of it and how it affects marketing and other departments. That's probably the biggest starting point. So just insights in the client, really understanding how they operate, not on a marketing level, but more on a business level.
Do you feel the clients that you're talking to throughout your time here in the role with RAPP, do you think they are where they need to be when it comes to their knowledge or what they want out of this? Or is it, you still find that a lot of it is an educational piece from your end when you are talking to these guys?
It's a little bit of both, but it's sort of like you're building the plane as you fly it, right? Yeah. So we're having to, when we introduce our services and what we offer, there's a lot of examples of how it's worked for other clients in and out of the region. And then just having open, transparent conversations on how we can add value, right? And not always providing the utopian state. So I think one of the biggest issues or things that have happened in the past is clients will bring in a new technology, they'll buy all the bells and whistles, they'll have these huge licensing fees, or they'll make just a capital investment in something, but then they won't have the proper team to stand it up, as an example.
Yeah.
So what seems to be working here very well is sort of a crawl, walk, run approach, baby steps. Let's get the foundational layer right first, and then we can move on. And making sure that the client understands that as well. So, a lot of times transformation journeys take 3 years, where a lot of times the board members or the decision makers think things can happen in a couple of quarters. Yeah. So that's always sort of that balancing act of like, yes, we add value, but it's incrementally, and everyone needs to be on board to that.
In one of my previous guests, I had a recruitment leader who we spoke about the struggles that we are almost starting from a 1 or 2 steps back compared to what we used to, where we're talking to clients and having to convince them to even engage with a partner, let alone engage with us as a specific partner. So whereas before I was used to, obviously just trying to compete, pick me ahead of them. Do you feel that your client conversations are more around convincing them to go down this path of building this data function to be able to enable every other part of the business? Or do you think it's more when you're there, you feel that you're pitching to convince them that it's RAPP and yourself more than to do this whole thing?
It's, you know what? I think it's a little bit of both. And it's convincing them. A lot of times they're convinced that they have to do it. They just don't know how, right? So we have to, they know the why, they know they have to change. They know at a high level, they know the why. They know that, the application of data is fundamentally changing industries. They know that the line between physical and virtual is blending. So they know that they have to go down this road, and data is like the new gold, right? It's a digital gold. Data is incredibly important. The how and the what is and the when is often where they trip and stumble. So you sort of have to convince them not convince them, but you have to have a dialogue with them on why these things are important and how you have done it in the past. I think to actually enable that to happen. So, it's not just about convincing them that, this is in the new future, but it's doing that, but showing them concretely how, right? I find, theoretical conversations, like we did a brand strategy a couple of weeks ago for a new car hauling service that's potentially going to be happening. They didn't want to, they know that they need to have marketing. They know they need to get out there, but it's very tactical. They want to know, how are we going to do this? So they operate also like startups. So usually in the space around data, you have to show concrete value to unlock more money. And usually when you are giving sort of, you're pitching for that business, you have to sort of, let's say, display both the convincing bit, but also operationally how you're going to do it with proof points that you've done it before. Because a lot of people come in with a song and dance. Yeah. We can do everything. We're going to change everything. It's going to be nothing but flowers and green pastures from here on out, which in reality, there's going to be stumbles. There's going to be roadblocks.
Yeah, of course.
And it's a partnership, right?
So from an outsider looking in, wouldn't that cause you more challenges and more problems if the key decision makers aren't as educated and knowledgeable when it comes to what works or what success looks like, what great looks like when it comes to this sort of function, when it comes to building this out? How are they basing their decisions on, or what are they basing their decisions on? Is it the personal relationship with yourself or with the other potential partners in this? Or because you present your case and say, this is what it needs to look like and this is what the milestones are going to be and whatever it may be. What are they basing that decision on in the end?
Yeah, it all depends on who you're talking to, right? Traditionally, let's say traditional marketing functions or marketing leaders, some of them have gone through data transformation and implementing, let's say, a CRM system or some form of omni-channel approach driven by a data platform. Some haven't. The ones that have licked their wounds, and they know the challenges of doing this. So it's usually an easier conversation.
That would be.
The ones that have no exposure to it know that it's important, but they don't know the how, the what, and the when. That's more of an educational process and step by step. They don't want to be exposed to risk. They don't want a project to blow up in their face to their management. So it's really about, operationally, how are we going to do this? How are we going to mitigate risk? That tends to work the best, and both for them and also for us. Because a lot of times organizations, let's face it, aren't ready for that kind of change. When you're making data the backbone of your operations, or let's say shared service, that fundamentally impacts the entire organization, right? And so whoever is going to be that sponsor, they got a target on them, right? Yeah. People are looking at them to prove it's not just in isolation of the marketing department. It's the organization that's watching them.
And you joined the business here, 2 years ago?
Two and a half now. Yeah.
They were small. They were very small when you joined, and they're not small anymore.
No. Yeah.
No, they're big now. Yeah. You're 40 odd.
We're over 50 now.
In the
region. And we've got some development centers offshore. So we work with a wider RAPP network, for instance, in Mauritius and Indian Ocean, with the colleagues in UK, also in Germany. So we're a true network solution, and we've got SMEs, so subject matter experts. You need them, right? You can't have everyone sitting in your office because it's just too heavy on your P&L. Yeah. So you have to pick and choose what do you have in-house, and how do you service your clients in-house? How do you add the value versus where do you bundle, let's say, services to basically have cost optimization, both for client but also for yourself.
I love that, because I think that's the way forward. I think the old mentality, the archaic way of just so many FTEs in your business because it's your form of growth isn't growth, isn't productive, isn't efficient. Yeah, I think, and even for my business, it's the same thing. Like we've gone lean. That are FTEs, and we've gone huge when it comes to freelancers, when it comes to people that are all around the world that we need to plug into, whether it's South Africa, South America, Asia, whatever it may be, Eastern Europe, and we've got people sitting there doing the work for us, building talent communities for us, because it's the same thing. They're subject matter experts in that field. why hire a Dubai-based recruiter who says they've got a network in Ukraine?
Yeah.
When I can hire someone from Ukraine who can find me the best tech talent, the best product talent in Ukraine.
Absolutely.
And not needing them here. So you've done that. So how else did you get this business? You come to this region, you come to this country with all the challenges that you face. You get an agency after COVID, okay, and then you grow it 300%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's huge, mate.
Yeah.
That is there. There's no mean feat.
There's a lot of blood there, though, for all the blood, sweat, and tears. But
I was there with you for the majority of it.
You were. So you
I saw it all. But like, I mean, it comes down to strong leadership, and that's one of the topics that I wanted to talk to you about today.
Yeah.
How do you get into that role, get the business that is going through a major transformation, and what kind of leadership do you think you needed to sort of display? You needed to sort of hone in on, and more importantly, you needed to develop to get it to where it is today.
So everyone's different, right? How we did it, and again, I go back to how I operate, and I'm an operator. I very much, I don't, let's say, obviously you have to delegate because you can't do everything yourself, but you have to lead from the front as much as possible. So just, for instance, we got a huge piece of business in about a year and a half ago, and we had to stand it up within 60 days. And so we got a Trello board up, a Kanban board, and we had 150 actions. And I was involved in every single action, just making sure things are pushed forward and just collaborating, right? And in saying that, everyone knew what all those actions were. So communication, open, transparent conversations. When you start having pocket conversations, when you have to scale quickly and time's of essence, and every minute counts, it's really about just ensuring everyone is in the conversation. There's no one that's isolated, that's not in the know, and there's clear responsibility.
Was that a conscious thing?
Of course, and it's a lot to do with there's been failures in the past, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have clear roles and responsibilities, or let's say the RACI matrix, as much as people think that's a theoretical exercise, I think it's really important to draw the lines in the sand, sitting here in Dubai, of who's doing what, right? You have to make sure and give clear ownership and accountability. So at the end of the day, those people, including myself, know exactly what they're responsible for. There's no mixing of words or accountability.
Were there moments where you thought, this is going pear-shaped, this isn't working?
All the time.
Yeah?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just part of it, right? Because you're venturing into a lot of times the unknown, right? Both when rebuilding or building up an agency and including more capabilities, and also client side, because they're kind of doing the same thing at the same time. Now we're at a point where we have a lot of internal learning, so IP, and people are settled into their roles. So we're becoming more efficient, more productive day by day. And ultimately that is then reflected into the clients, right? When you become more efficient and productive and you have that experience of doing it, that and lead from the front and really take ownership of your tasks, that will eventually have a trickle down effect with all the people around you.
What do you think the perception of you is as a leader in the business and in the region?
Well, what do you think?
Well, I think apart from the physical presence that you do have whenever you enter a room, which is quite frightening, I think you have a very inspirational presence where you get them to come along for the ride, the journey. And I think you spend more than enough time in explaining what you're trying to achieve. And I think that helps you in getting people to sort of latch onto you, and then you go quick and you go hard.
Well, yeah, and
that's from just a external partner's perspective, right? So I don't see the intricacies, but I see enough, and I've spoken to enough people in your business to get sort of vibes from your sort of presence.
Yeah.
Am I accurate?
Well, I don't. It's hard for. I'm always really bad at self-reflection. Well, not.
Let me change the question.
Yeah.
How would you like to be perceived as a leader?
Yeah, and open, transparent, trustworthy.
Yeah.
And I have an open door policy. You know that. Your team knows that. You can always, my door is literally always open. Anyone can come in and talk to me. And I think that's something that the team appreciates, regardless of what level you are. If we bring interns in sometimes as well, you can come talk to me. Anyone can come in and have a chat. And I think providing that guidance to anybody, anytime, anywhere, just being that sort of transparent leader, accessible, I think is really important here. I think it's for me, it's done me well. And I'd like to think of myself as that accessible.
Are there moments in your career prior to this role or previous roles where you thought this is where I'm heading? Were there like just light bulb moments, triggers where you thought, yeah, you know what, I can actually do this?
It's been.
I want to do this.
yeah.
Because being able to is one thing, wanting to do it is something else.
Yeah.
As you and I both know, right?
Yeah.
You have the appetite for it.
Exactly. And you need to, I think, grit. You need to have a certain level of resilience and grit to operate in this space, right? To constantly be a change maker, to constantly be pushing your team and yourself. Even right after a failure, that's always the hardest, because you never hit it out of the park every single time, right? It's always going to be issues and things that crop up, and it's how you deal with them, how you learn from it, how you move forward. I've always, I always knew that I would be I always knew that I would have some form of role in, let's say, the transformation space, because I find it exciting. It's not mundane. It's always new, and it's always changing. Landing in Dubai after 20 some odd years in this role, I guess no one can predict that. I'm married to my French wife, and
having a family here.
Family here, no, that I would never have predicted.
And having such a young family here whilst you're going through this leadership of a transformation, of a transforming business, right? That is that's on a level of stress.
That's a whole other.
Not many can comprehend.
Yeah. At that point, you just have to, everything is just. Let's say I have a very structured before and after work. My bookends are quite structured, just because I'm usually at work between 10 and 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
The 2.5-year-old, my son, is sort of my center of. He's my alarm clock in the morning.
Yeah.
You feed him.
That's brilliant.
You have to look after yourself as well. So I have a gym routine in the morning, just because you don't have it.
You work out? I hadn't noticed.
Every once in a while. I'm not a long distance runner, although I'd like to be. But yeah,
you look like you probably run with 2 men on your shoulders. Well, look, I had a similar sort of, when I moved here with my wife. We had a 6-month-old. We landed 2 weeks after landing. My wife told me that she was pregnant with our second. And she's like, we're going to obviously go home now, right? Like, you're out of your mind if you think we're having the second one here.
And you're like, challenge accepted.
Because I thought, no, we can make this work. We spent so much time and effort into moving here that going back was never an option. And even though it was so difficult those first sort of 12 to 18 months, and more so for her, because she was home getting more and more pregnant, having a second while I'm at work and seeing Dubai, going to see clients, seeing everything, going down from downtown to Marina and anywhere else in between and so forth. And people don't really sort of factor that in when they look at people, when they're talking to them, when they're meeting them, when they're interviewing them, when they're hiring them, when they're just, collaborating, is the human side. What I find with your business, and you particularly, is that when we've worked with you over the last sort of 2 years, that you really have an emphasis on the people side. Yeah. That human element of business, which is, but for a business who doesn't have a genuine sort of HR sort of function or a talent acquisition function, like, we act that for you, right? Like, you really hone in on that human element side. Yeah. Where does that come from?
My father.
Yeah?
Yeah. So cut to me, Curtis Schmidt, sitting on a bench in a mall when my 2 sisters and my mom would go shopping, and I'd sit there with my dad, and he'd just sit there and people watch. My dad's a very quick, charismatic person. He's really good with people. He's down to earth, but everyone's got a story, and you always got to listen. And it doesn't matter who they are; everyone's all the same, skin and bone. And at the end of the day, everyone's made of the same stuff.
Yeah.
And so he made me at a very young age really appreciate the individual story, the individual's hardships that they all have, or delight. It's just. But he's the one. Yeah. So very early age, my dad.
Amazing. You mentioned earlier delegation.
Yeah.
I think is a huge part of strong leadership. I think probably the best leaders around the world in all things, whether it's government, whether it's sport, business, they know how to bring in the right people. They know how to let go and empower others around them. You've recently done that in your business.
Yeah.
And you brought in some really good people, some great people into your business, senior people, take the load to be able to free you up to do other things, growth, and just be probably a lot more client-facing and less dependent on, the 150 odd sort of things that you had on the board, right? So the actions that you had. So what was that trigger for you then to be able to do that? And how easy is it for you to let go? Because you are a hands-on leader.
Yeah.
Like you said, so you are that person who's constantly involved, fingers in every pie and so forth. And you've got some people now in your business that are fantastic to do some of that for you. So how is that transition?
I think it's been good because it's been incremental, right? Like it hasn't been a whole bunch of new people that you can just delegate immediately to, or let's say give them leadership and decision-making power. I think that the most important thing is that you're hiring the right people. So they need to fit the business, and culturally that they are also open, empathetic, and basically are in it for the same things why you're in it, right? They have a true passion for the industry. Let's face it, I'm not doing this because it's gonna make me a trillionaire. I enjoy it. I think it's incredibly fulfilling. So first is just making sure that you hire the right people and culturally that they fit. Second, it came down to money, right? Like to get those people that are basically my number 2s or 3s or whatever, to own pieces of the business. It came down to that you can pay them, right? Because we're scaling, we're operating like a startup. So that's an honest answer. And then, when it comes down to actually delegation, I've always been open communication, over communicate, confirm what you've heard, and just building that culture of you take it, you understand it, now run. And the business has a culture like that, right? But you also have to give them sort of light at the end of the tunnel. It just can't be constantly running. This is a marathon, not a sprint, all those sort of nice little cliches. But it is kind of true. And, we also ensure that, people's times are protected, their private lives. You have your weekends and you have your evenings, and you don't have to, you're not always on, right? So when you're at work, you're productive, you're communicating well with your colleagues, you're getting stuff done, task oriented, right? And and just ensure that they live those principles.
Do you ever find it hard to let go?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Because there's sometimes so much at risk. But at the end of the day, when there's so much at risk and someone achieves it and they get over that hurdle, now they own it. They achieved it. Yeah. But that's tough because sometimes it doesn't always swing in your favor, right? Yeah. Sometimes, it goes sideways, right? But very often, especially with the team that we have now, it's we're consistently delivering. So that's great. And
growing a business, in my experience, having a business of 10, 12, 15 people, and taking it to 50 plus, they're worlds apart in so many factors. One in particular is the culture of the business, right? It's quite intimate when you're 10, 12 people. Yeah. Everyone knows everyone really, really well. You're in the trenches with everybody. You see the good and bad. And then all of a sudden you start expanding, and then you're further away from the people that you once sat next to because the teams are getting bigger and so forth. And less potential sort of social interaction, let alone business interaction. And it gets bigger and bigger. How do you, because you are very people-centric, how do you maintain a culture that is sustainable through growth and the type of growth that you've actually embarked on?
I think it's just, it comes from me, or it comes, for the culture, the openness, the sort of accepting culture that we have needs to be reflected in the next, my peers, the leadership team as a whole, and knowing that they reflect those sort of, let's say, values and value systems that I have. Hopefully they're having the same kind of conversation with their lines of report, direct lines of report, as I would have with them. So it's really, it's empowering and just, giving people the freedom to have those conversations and to really have those personal connections with, let's say, the wider team, knowing that they are kind of lockstep in terms of how you approach it in terms of your values.
You have those structures in place. You have those sort of, those lines that
because
it's all pretty clear for everybody.
It's kind of just known, right? Like we operate very transparently. We operate, with trust, and we operate with ownership. So when you do that, and but they can always, at the end of the day, still come to me.
Yeah.
So no matter what, if they're having those interactions with their direct report, if it's whatever line of the business it's in, and they're not getting what they need from that conversation, they always know that they come to see me.
So when you're growing and when you're identifying and attracting the best people, that's obviously crucial, because you need to be able to sell who you are, and gone are the days where the interviewer is just in on a chair asking questions while the interviewee is begging for their supper, right? Because it's not the case anymore. Candidates are quite empowered, and candidates are coming in there to sort of drill down on who you are and what you stand for and what the culture is like, and what am I stepping into, and the benefits, the flexibility, the work from home. Recently, someone we recently played with you is 2 days in Abu Dhabi, 3 days in your office in Dubai, and so forth. And if you didn't have that flexibility, there was no way it was going to work. Is it a case-by-case basis thing with you? Is it just, seeing who you like, who you meet, what we need to make work to bring that right person into the business? Or do you have that sort of structure where, we are like this now, and this is our sort of agile, remote work from home type sort of culture?
We do. So we treat everyone generally equally, right? Well, not generally. We treat everyone equally. So my privileges are the exact same privileges as everyone else. I adhere to the employee handbook. So recently we had the daughter, Ava. She's 4 months old. I had 5 days paternity leave, because that's what is given by the country. There's no flex, right? And again, it's a lead by example. Fridays, we can work from home. If people are living in other cities like Abu Dhabi, do they have to commute? That's where we can start looking a little bit, because that's their life situation, right? Work situation, life situation, two sort of separate things. We need to make sure sometimes those things merge. The one thing that I would say where it's a flag is if it's just all about money, right? So we provide a culture, I think, at RAPP where it's enticing and it's nice. People have their side businesses. As long as if there's conflict, we give a lot of freedom there. But when I get concerned is when it's basically how much are you willing to give me monetary, right? Because in this market, it's still fairly transient, and it's still fairly, like, the loyalty here to an employer every year, I think it decreases potentially. I don't know. You're the expert in this, but you hear a lot of these conversations. The funny thing at RAPP is we're creating, like, let's say, an employee base where we have super high retention, and that's not because of the money that we pay. We pay, a competitive market rate, but it is really around the culture, and that can have staying power. That has stickiness. So if they're interested in how we operate as a culture and how we operate as a community, that's super interesting for me. If it's immediately how much are you going to pay me and what's my compensation, that for me is just a flag we might be misaligned in terms of.
And there's a fine line between being a job seeker and looking to see what else is out there, meeting RAPP and yourself, and then saying, I'm on 30. Can I get to 35, 37 by jumping ship? Because I'm probably not going to get to 35 where I currently am. Even if I do get a promotion, it might go 10%, 8%, whatever it may be.
Totally.
There's a fine line with that, and then actually wanting to be doing something different, doing something more, developing yourself, working in a better environment, working for better leaders, right? So it's quite easy for us to know when we talk to people where their motivations lie, without even asking the questions, because a lot of the conversation is, like you said, is around the salary, around their package, and what they can earn. We're not saying that's wrong.
Yeah.
You know, people have the right to earn. Like,
Of course.
even now recently in the news, Saudi's pumping a lot of money into the footballing world, right? And they're throwing contracts at people that are just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
So typically, they first went with Ronaldo, and he's gone there, okay, for a obscene amount of money. They offered Messi, I think it was like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions. He turned it down, okay, in just wages. And obviously, it's in Saudi, so it's tax-free, right? And then they started getting some other good players, but towards the twilight of their careers. What was interesting now is that just recently, they've pretty much signed a 26-year-old in his prime who plays in the English Premier League, who's a Portuguese guy. And he's agreed to go. Now, there's debate all over social media over, is he ruining his career? People are slagging him off. He's a disgrace, like he's a sellout. We need to be careful with this as well, because he plays football for 10, 12, 15 years. And the rest, he's probably going to live off that money and maybe try and get into media and be a pundit or do whatever it is, right? So his earning capacity is in a very small window. So our windows aren't that small, but still, if you have an opportunity to earn, I always have sort of tolerance and acceptance for people who are not necessarily only driven by money, but see that as a motivator or a driver because they have family, they have financial responsibilities. Do you find it difficult to identify the difference between that and the one who's just pure money hungry?
Well, if we knew that his motivation was purely money, that would be a different conversation. But we don't actually know why he, why is KSA so attractive? For me, I think, you hear of these conversations of these crazy expat packages, regardless if it's a famous football player or executives. I've had some pretty outlandish offers myself, where you're sort of like, wow, that's a lot of money. But right now I'm committed to RAPP. There's a bigger thing happening in Saudi, though. Right? They're transforming a country. They're transforming where they derive value and how they define themselves. And maybe, the footballer's enlightened by that. Maybe he finds, that as an interesting opportunity to help, define not only a football team, but a football nation. So
it happened here. It happened here 10, 15 years ago. Golden paychecks, villas were offered to people and so forth. I mean, when I first came here 8 years ago, it was quite similar. One of the first clients I worked with, it was a senior VP role. The package was absurd. Probably till this day, I don't think people are getting paid anywhere near what that person was being offered. When it comes to not only the salary, but the benefits that they were given. Like a BMW, a villa on the Palm, and whatever it may be, sort of thing.
Craziness.
Just ridiculous money, right? Again, because they had to bring the right sort of minds, the right skill set into the region.
Yeah.
So companies are in that situation sometimes where they just need the best and they have to pay the best, but it does change the market. It does change the landscape for us as recruiters, for you as clients or people who are hiring, because you're competing with a lot of others who are probably paying a lot more than what they should be and what the market is saying these people are worth, purely because of their need, because of their desperation.
Yeah.
It's hard to overcome that from our perspective, and I'm sure it's hard. I've seen it with you, being in the trenches with you, that it is difficult to compete with these ones who just blindly just write a check and say, come and join me.
But that's right back to the point that I made at the beginning. If it's all about money, let them go.
Yeah.
Because it's not all about the money. If it was all about the money, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing, right? Like they have to
and be wrestling in the
be suplexing someone. But it's really, money is definitely important, right? You got to put food on the table. Totally get it. And I'm not saying that that's not important, but it's an index of things. It's an aggregate of things that actually makes a job interesting. It's the clients that you work with, the culture that you have,
the impact you're having on
the impact. Exactly. Yeah. Right. And if I guess my point back to it is just, if it's purely about money and they don't ask any other questions about culture, your client list, what kind of work are you involved in, and it's just really about the GD, and at the end of the day, what do I take home? That's concerning, because it's at the end of the day, they will not be loyal to you. They'll gain more experience, and then to your point, in 12, 18 months or even less, they'll just jump ship to the next competitive offer. Yeah. And that's a vicious cycle to get involved in, right? You don't want to get involved. You don't want to compete in that space, right? Because that's ultimately going to impact your clients, right? Because your cost base is going to continue to rise, which is then eventually it's going to have to reflect somewhere. It's either reflected in your P&L, your profitability, or it's reflected onto the client.
It's near impossible. I've done it in the past. My clients have done it in the past. You hire someone, you know you're paying overs. Your mindset is, your expectation on that person is unrealistic.
Yeah.
You're setting them up to fail.
Yeah.
Right? Because you are paying them more, so you want more. It's just human nature.
Yeah.
I'm giving you this.
Yeah.
So now do more for me, because I'm paying you more than what I should have, but I had to get you into the business because that's how you negotiated, and it's kind of unfair to them. It's unfair to you, because in the end, it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
Because you're setting these milestones and these targets for someone to achieve that they're not, but they kind of have to, because to justify their cost, they need to do the extra little bit more, right?
And it will backfire on them. So we've made last year we made a hire like that. The individual, their CV was very, very strong. It was strong. More of a like kind of in the transition between, let's say in between two positions. Let's put it that way. And they position themselves on the next tier. What they didn't really, what didn't come through in the interview process was that they were always micromanaged. So their success was basically the extended arm of their manager, if that makes sense. Yeah. And then when they came to us, that individual was empowered to basically, these are the things that you need to get done.
And was lost.
And this is how you're going to be measured from it. Yalla, go, let's run, and let's check in, but freedom. And that person lasted less than 2 months, a month and a half. And we ultimately had to have a conversation because of stress and anxiety that they had, because they knew that they oversold themselves and they didn't really take a good, long, hard look at what they were actually tasked to do. Ultimately backfired on them. So, I think if you're good at what you do, the fame and fortunes will come, right? Just focus on delivery, focus on, providing that value, the money will come, right? And that's often, especially with the younger generations.
That's a great lesson.
They want to have all the money now, which, okay, fine. But to your point, where's my bang for buck, right? Yeah. How are you providing value to not only us, but also the clients above and beyond what your, let's say, banding would typically allow you to have. Yeah. So it's the pressure's on, right? And it's just often it's just a rookie mistake.
It is. Something else that I wanted to talk to you about, which is a hot topic for all of us: the client-vendor relationship, the management of that. Right? It's there's a lot of angles to this.
Yeah.
I've always liked working with digital advertising media agencies because I see a lot in what we do in what they do, because we are at the mercy of our clients to a certain degree in what we can and can't sort of achieve in our business, based on how we get paid, based on how they engage with us and so forth. So I'd like to hear it from just your perspective, the process when it comes to the sort of just what you have to go through to secure a client. Yeah. Can you just walk us through that and probably where you think the gaps are?
Yeah.
In that?
Yeah, no worries. So it kind of depends region to region, my experience, in terms of process, vendor client relations. I think here in this market, it's twofold, right? One is the market in terms of managing, let's say, those processes and making it official is quite loose. For instance, in UK or Germany or North America, you have associations and bodies that kind of hold, the client and or the vendor accountable in terms of how they treat one another. So, phantom pitches or procurement exercises, I think are a little bit more tightly controlled in other markets. I think here it's still really loose. So that's a challenge for sure. The other side of that coin is what we do in terms of RAPP and being in precision marketing or data-driven marketing. The lead time, or let's say the conversion, is much, much longer because it's often you're not just talking with marketing, you're talking and procurement, you're talking with, for instance, IT department, you're going to have to talk with salespeople, you're going to have to talk with customer service, and then you've got let's say a quorum of people that you have to find consensus with. Yeah. So those are two challenges that I specifically feel I feel here on a day-to-day.
Okay. And partnerships. I notice. I can bring a perfect live example, which is your business, your growth, and we were a part of that. And we were thrilled to be a part of that because of the excitement around what you were trying to build. Which is always, a lot of it. It's an easier sell for us to go to market when there's something really juicy and exciting, right? When you take to a market rather than just, client A is looking for a marketing manager. You want to join them? Like, this is a growing agency. The president is like this. They just won this account. They're trying to do this and so forth. But there's so many different factors that helps us sell it, right? Yeah. What really worked for us outside of all that, probably the easiest thing for us was working with a client who valued the recruitment process and the steps involved and wanted to have a genuine partnership with someone. Yeah. Right? So you included us in. Yeah. Like, you brought us into the office. Part of the team. We were on site. We felt like we were part of the team.
You were and still are.
Exactly, right. And that for me, when I dissect the methodology and the process, has a huge impact as to why we were successful in being able to get you what you need. Yeah. Do you have that sort of collaboration? Maybe not to that extent, right? But do you strive for that when you're talking to your potential clients?
100%. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. We have some partners that their success is our success and vice versa, right? So they're ensuring that, financially it makes sense for both parties, that it's a fair and equitable relationship on for both parties. Then you have some clients that it's a race to the bottom. Yeah. Right? It's all about money. At the end of the day, you have the commercial and the technical proposal. The technical proposal is often treated like the gatekeeper to, the commercial proposal, which is a race to the bottom, which I think is still very present here in the market today. And why it's so hard is because Dubai and the wider region, you have, let's say, the mosaic or the canvas of agencies here. You've got agencies that are true, international agencies with international talent. You've got local agencies. You've got the hybrid organizations, and they all have different rate cards, different pricing models. And so it makes, often they will take, the going rate for, let's say, the most price competitive agencies, to put it in a nice way, but let's just say the cheapest.
That's a very nice way.
Let's just say the cheapest.
I can think of many other terms.
And then they benchmark it. And then what ends up happening is that everyone has to meet that price, right? Yeah. So it's a race to the bottom. And what ends up happening is that the leadership in that agency often are considered, like, let's say, free of cost. They provide their services ad hoc. But when it's a race to the bottom, the scope of work no longer reflects the team. So you have a gap. So then you've got your leadership coming in to try to fill that gap. And then when you do that over and over and over again with multiple clients, you basically lead to saturation of your leadership time, which they don't keep their eye on the ball of other things, and ultimately burnout, because they have to juggle so many balls to make up so much, let's say, the difference between commercially what was agreed to with a remaining scope, and just it leads to a sort of it's not a win-win, right? So
has there ever been you don't have to name names, you can if you want to do a mic drop, but has there ever been a time where you knew what you were offering service-wise was exactly what the client wanted? Yeah. But they chose someone else purely based on price.
Yeah, it happens. Yeah. It happens all the time.
But you know in your heart of hearts, they bought into you, they bought into your offering, they bought into what you're going to provide to them, the ROI, everything like that. It's just that last bit, which is like, we can't pay this, we don't want to pay this, mixture of both, and then they walk away. Yeah,
I've seen it actually. The best example wasn't here; it was outside the region, and that exact situation happened, and they went with let's say a cheaper solution, and ultimately 3 years later, it came back, and they lost 3 years. There was no consistency in the team or their communications. Brand equity was diluted, and they had to go to repitch, right? Because the other team just simply, they were window shopping, right? And they bought like the nicest facade with the cheapest price, and at the end of the day, it kind of bit them.
Yeah.
So I get you have to breed, you have to be competitive with your price, but it needs to be a healthy mixture, right? And often here they want everything, open scope, retainer, whatever, and it doesn't work like that, because that's someone's time and money. We work on time. We work on time work, right? Time. We work on FTEs, and they have a finite amount of time, and if they're working on client work, that means that they can't work on other client work, and so on and so forth, and then your productivity as an agency drops. You need to, the client needs to be aware of that. Often they're not.
I used to drop a line in my early days of management or leadership, and I used to talk to a client when they used to haggle and try and negotiate on rates. And I was lucky enough to work for like bigger businesses where we had a position of power when it came to that negotiation. But I would turn around and just say to them, you've walked into Mercedes and asked them for Ford. What's going on here? If you want the premium car, then you need to pay the premium car. Otherwise, go down the road and go get yourself a Hyundai. If that's for you, but you can't say that you want a Mercedes or you want a McLaren or you want a Lamborghini. You want that high-end service if you're only willing to pay X, Y, Z, right? And the cars or the service provider that is willing to offer that high-end service at that low-end rate, they're the ones that are causing the problem for us.
So what we do is we often just reduce scope to be in line with the budget. Going back to the crawl, walk, run approach, we then focus on, okay, what are the crawl elements? But ultimately, they're going to build it back up, right? Because that's not their desired end state. 24 months down the road, they're going to need more stuff. And if that's what it takes to build a relationship, then so be it. But
which is sad, because you're sort of cutting your service at 10% off, 20% off, half down, to make it fit within their budget restraints. Right? When you know that what they need is full service that you've offered originally, but because of your visibility as to what they can or are willing to pay, you're then forced to get into a conversation when you're saying, I'll do less then. And how does that benefit them? And how does that benefit you if you're not able to do the job correctly? Yeah.
And, hey, listen, it happens to you all the time, right? Like, I'm sure that you
we have
tons of examples.
We have clients coming to us and say, I'll work with you in 4 other agencies. And I'm looking around saying, where's the hidden camera? This must be a joke. Like, this is not 993 where I'm going to sit on a panel with 3 or 4 other agencies taking a brief from one client, because they don't even want to brief us individually. They want to brief us together. And then you hear the caginess of all the other recruiters out there who don't want to ask such questions, because it's like, why would you even think that is best practice for you? It's not efficient, it's not productive. And one client said something really good to me just recently. He said, we're in it for the same reason, the same outcome. I want to hire, you want to place. So let's work together and find the best possible way that we can actually collaborate, so we get the end result that we both want, which is you putting someone in my business and me hiring someone who I need. Surely it's that simple for you going to a client and saying they want to create this, build this, or whatever it is that they want to do. You can offer this. What am I missing here?
That goes right back though to when you treat accessible, open, trustworthy conversations within your team or the agency, it also needs to be like that with the client. So I always focus on trying to build senior leadership relationships, informal, or let's say friendly, where they can call you up informally at any point in time, offer a point of view, use you as a sounding board. I do that with all my clients, and some take advantage of that more than others. But at the same time, that will allow you to have those frank kind of conversations with them when the time comes to say, listen, this is how we got here today, in terms of the procurement process, and this is the outcome of it. It might not be ideal for both parties, but it is what it is. Let's start kind of rebuilding this relationship and the scope. And then, and hopefully that like open line of communication will allow things to just basically happen quicker. And again, you just have to deliver, and there has to be that trust. But senior client relationships is critical, especially in a market like this.
Multiple senior client relationships as well, is that critical?
It depends on the size of the client, right? Yeah. Because if you have different departments, and they have different decision makers and they have different needs, because the needs of the marketing department might not be the exact same needs as, for instance, the IT department, which would be different than the sales department. So you sometimes need to, you speak to them individually because the business is, inherently siloed. So yes, sometimes, but often it's, for instance, with the CMO or someone who has a decision-making power, and you just make sure that you demonstrate that you're accessible to them, right? Like you're here, and if you got a question, fire away, and I'm going to give you, a very direct and transparent response. Sometimes they like it, sometimes they don't. But often, if you're close enough to the business, your advice is taken.
Let's fire away on something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Payments.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
It baffles me. It baffles me that still in 2023, with such progression and evolution in this part of the world, that payments, contracts are just
super painful. Yeah. And
why?
Why? That I think that's the $1 million question, literally. For us, there's always like this stretching of payment terms, right? So, but at the end of the day, we work on cash flow. We need cash flow, and because our resource base is so heavy, my cash flow revolves around my headcount, right? That's where most of my cash goes. So if I don't get my money, I can't pay my partners, I can't pay my employees, which thankfully doesn't happen. But they're always trying to extend the terms. It's typically 60 days. They want 90. And sometimes you wonder if they're just trying to. They're having a go at you. But it is painful here, and I think that a lot of companies don't actually understand the agency business. So when you onboard a new account, it often takes 3 months, right? So from the day of signing to getting paid is usually 3 months. That's a long lag time when people are productive on that, and basically it's their time, right? So, and I really fundamentally think that a lot of, not all, but there are a lot of clients out there or procurement that either aren't aware of it or they don't care. I don't know.
I think they don't care. And I'll be completely blunt on this, because you mentioned that your dad said something that I really, really liked, which was that everyone's got their story, right? And everyone's got, and just to take notice of where everyone is at in their lives and what their position is and so forth. Yeah. The clients that we deal with, the clients that you deal with, understand how the business runs. Yeah. They know that we're not sitting on a pile of cash to be able to do 3 months of work without revenue coming in, for us to then be late on that payment and then say, it's 4 months or it's 5 months or it's 6 months. I pivoted my business in July 2021 to be more upfront payments, so retained work, whether that was retained on an individual search or retained on an outsource. An outsource we had with you, we had on a monthly retainer where we were on site, whatever it was. That is the model that is the only way that we can sustain our business. Now, God knows how other businesses are surviving with 30, 60, 90-day payment terms. And I'll do my little mic drop. Saudi Arabia are, famous for, 120 days. Even longer, biannual sort of payments. They let them all come and collect together, and they make one big payment for, multiple invoices in the end of June, and they'll make the other one at the end of the year. Just like, you're not getting it. You're not understanding what I'm doing behind the scenes to give you this service the high level thing that you really enjoy, that you really are happy with, because I can't pay them to do this.
Totally. And instead, there are a ton of challenges, but how we approach it as a business is, again, the simple principles of transparency. So we have a very big client that we, on a monthly basis, show them. So we've mapped out the team structure and, the percentages of headcounts, how much are they on the business. And then we, on a monthly basis, go through utilization, where it's up, where it's down. So they know exactly. And if it's down, it's down. If they weren't productive, we show it. We don't sort of, let's say, buffer it. And that is just such a healthy relationship that we've built up, that they have a vested interest to make sure that, because we make them sort of part of the process. We give the inner workings of how we work. We show the client and we work with them.
That level of transparency is quite unique.
It's
especially
unique
in your industry.
It is. Yeah. It is, but it's one of the only ways. Because when we originally got this client, it was a huge scope of work with very few resources. So we said, listen, we will do this, but for this amount of scope of work. But if we're in agreement that we're going to take a look at utilization, and if we see any huge discrepancies or variances, that's a conversation that we need to kick off. Yeah. And it needs to be a fruitful conversation, not just lip service. Yeah. And they agreed to it. And so fast forward to today, and the account is flourishing, and we've got an amazing relationship on multiple levels with this client. But it's just down to also we will sit with them, they will sit with us. So we just have such a level of trust and transparency that it speaks for itself. And there's empathy. I think that's a word. It's often used and never practiced. And overused sometimes, but to really understand where
overspoken, not necessarily overused,
overspoken, So exactly. So that's kind of
brilliant. A couple more before we close this off. Your view on the recruitment landscape, the talent acquisition landscape here in this region. What are your views on how it's handled, the process, and so forth? I know you've been blessed because you've been working with some great talent partners from what I hear, but just in general, as a general opinion.
So, you guys were instrumental to ramp up the team.
This was not a cheap sort of set up plug, by the way.
No.
Not that our talent's on the TV or anything like that right now.
But you're the only people that I've dealt with, since I've been in the region. I've heard some, let's say horror stories. We've had a lot of success. Now that we have incremental hires and we've got enough people in the agency that we do a lot of let's say internal just recruitment, because we've got 50
Absolutely.
people. So we should, right? But for those special hires, we still come to you. I would say that if I compare it to other markets, like when I worked in Germany or UK, where we'd have to do recruitment, there is still a little bit of overselling and under delivering from the talent base. It's quite competitive, so the good people are really sought after, which just creates a hyper-competitive market. But I guess if you go back to the principles of just, it's about the company culture, it's about being in a good place to work. Because again, you can never, I can't compete with some of the, I don't know, let's say Noons or Telebat, where they'll need a data analyst. They can throw more money at an analyst and offer them more than I can. But they're a small cog in a machine, right? At Noon or Telebat or whatever it is, right? These are huge companies. And I'm just using this as an example versus us, where, they really are going to craft and grow something of their own. And they might not earn, it's going to be competitive, but they probably won't be the money being thrown at them. But they have a say, and they can develop. And again, especially for the more junior resources, the money will come, right? Develop your skills, hone in on your skills, and the cash will come. Just, and it's...
Love that. Last one. Yeah. The ultimate success for RAPP.
Yeah.
What does that look like in whatever time frame? When you're going to sit back in your chair, I'm not sure whether you have stogies or not.
No.
You're not a stogie guy.
No.
Maybe a protein shake.
Yeah. Exactly.
and sit back and say, you know what? Mission accomplished. I got it to where it is. What does that look like? The ultimate success.
So we want to be sort of one of the cornerstone agencies in the region for Omnicom, obviously, right? So we want to sort of own the OPMG, Omnicom Precision Marketing Group sort of practice here, or be the go-to agency for that.
Yeah.
So and have, let's say, our partner network know that, where we have active referrals from our partner network, where they're just sending people to us because we are a trustworthy partner. In Saudi, obviously, there's a lot of pains that go along with the market because it is growing and it's developing, but there's huge opportunity there. Obviously, there's going to be some revenue targets in there too, but I'm not going to disclose that.
Huh? We can't get an exclusive. This is going to air in like 2 months anyway.
No, but you obviously have to have that too, right? Because at the end of the day, you got to provide stakeholder, shareholder value.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, and a great place to work, like actually be nominated and recognized as a great place to work. Creative awards as always, and just be the go-to shop for precision CRM marketing here in the region.
Amazing, mate. And you're on the way.
Hopefully.
No word of a lie. With your leadership and a bit of support from some great external partners, I think you'll definitely get
bearded
there,
Vikings, yeah.
Some bearded Vikings that just roam around Media City whenever you meet them. You're doing great things. You're a testament to what a genuine partnership should look like.
Thank you.
The business is on the up and just kicking some amazing goals.
Yeah.
And this has been an enjoyable conversation. And I might even bring you back, in a few months' time to see whether or not we can have a longer chat. A follow up.
Absolutely, man. Well, thank you for having me.
Pleasure.
Brother.
Yeah.
All right.
As always, you can listen to us on Google, Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. And you can find my profile on LinkedIn and reach out to me